began with the room 6 at the north end of the Crofton Inn, above the back stairwell and facing the chapel ruins. They gave it to Edward because the other rooms were full, though he noticed no guests in the breakfast hall the next morning, nor any footsteps overhead during the night. The innkeeper, a lean woman with trembling hands and a voice like paper tearing, had looked at him strangely when she handed him the key. "Room 6 is perfectly fine," she said, but she said it as though someone had asked long ago whether it wasn't. Edward wasn't a nervous man. He was precise, a lecturer, a reader of books with Latin titles. He enjoyed solitude, disliked conversation, and preferred rooms with windows that did not look directly into someone else's. Room 6 suited him, except for the mirror. It hung over the dresser, tall and narrow, set in a wooden frame carved with vines and strange small eyes. It was curiously cleaner than everything else in the room. No dust, no smears. It reflected the space too perfectly, every detail as sharp as glass. The first night, Edward glanced at it as he passed. He saw himself as expected, though there was something off. His hand, he noticed, looked red, angry, swollen. Bleeding? He looked down. Nothing. He chalked it up to poor lighting. But the next morning, he sliced his thumb while shaving. He remembered the reflection, the angry red hand. It made him laugh softly, uncertainly. By the third night, he stopped laughing. He had started studying the mirror. Each night before bed, he stood in front of it longer. The reflections shifted subtly, too subtly. His shirt wrinkled when it was not, the lamp off when it still glowed behind him. One evening, he saw himself with water dripping from his hair, soaked through the shirt. He hadn't bathed yet. Later that night, the bathroom faucet burst, flooding the floor. By then, he had begun to sleep poorly. He moved the chair against the mirror once. Woke to find the chair moved aside, the mirror bare and untouched. On the fifth night, the image turned sinister. He saw himself hanging. Not theatrically, no ghastly tongue or bulging eyes. Just hanging, calmly, neatly, a rope from the ceiling beam above the bed. His eyes opened, staring downward, as though watching his own shoes sway. He did not sleep that night. Instead, he watched. The mirror, the beam, the darkness. Nothing happened. Until morning. He demanded a new room. The innkeeper refused, her mouth twisting as though the idea offended her. "It's just an old mirror," she muttered. "We've tried taking it down." He asked what she meant. She said nothing else. He tried to leave, packed his bag, called for a cab. The call never connected. When he returned to room 6, the mirror was different again. Now he wasn't in it. The room reflected in it was empty, but the bed was unmade, and the closet door slowly swung shut. He is still in room 6, not visibly, not in the bed, not in the mirror. But if you stay in the Crofton Inn and find yourself in room 6, don't look too long into the mirror. You might see something you shouldn't. Something coming from behind, perhaps, or the beam above the bed creaking softly. And if the reflection looks better than the real you, don't blink, because the mirror is always waiting. And once it likes your version better, keeps it. The game came from the attic, or rather from a box left behind in the attic, though who had left it and when was never quite clear. Hazel and Jonah found it on the second week after moving into their grandmother's house. She had died in the winter, quiet and without fuss, in her sleep. The house had been left to their mother, who rarely visited since childhood and spoke of the place as though it were always someone else's burden. Their mother was busy. The children, left to themselves during the long August days, wandered the halls like ghosts in training. The attic was forbidden and therefore irresistible. It was Hazel who found the board. It was old, crudely carved wood, more rectangular than square, its surface scratched with letters and numbers in a looping, unfamiliar hand. Across the top, someone had etched, "Knock once for yes, twice for no." Jonah touched it first, brushing off a fine layer of dust. He giggled. "It's like an old Ouija thing." Hazel, older by 2 years and half a head taller, squinted. "There's no planchette," she said. Don't need one, Jonah said. You ask it questions and it knocks back. Who knocks? Hazel asked. He grinned. Ghosts. She should have put it back in the box. Should have closed the attic door and told their mother. Should have forgotten it. Instead, they brought it to their room. The game began harmlessly. Will I get a bike for Christmas? Jonah asked. Knock. Will Hazel ever stop being bossy? Knock, knock. They laughed, and Hazel rolled her eyes. She accused Jonah of knocking himself. He denied it, swearing by the school library and his Game Boy. They tried it again the next day. Jonah asked if their grandmother had died in the room upstairs. Pause. Then, knock. Hazel's smile faded. Are you doing that? She whispered. Jonah only stared at the board. By the third day, it started answering questions before they were finished. Hazel would begin to ask, Are you? Knock. She froze. Did you know what I was going to say? Knock. Her mouth went dry. Are you in the house? Knock. That night, she dreamed of breathing. Not hers. Heavy and damp from inside the walls. In the dream, someone sat at the foot of her bed. She could hear the floorboards creak and the soft scratch of something. Nails, maybe, tracing the wall beside her. When she woke, the board was on her bed, not on the shelf where she'd left it. Jonah was still asleep, or pretending. They tried to stop, tried to leave it untouched, but the board began knocking on its own. Night, during breakfast, from under the bed, from inside the closet. One knock, then two, sometimes in answer, sometimes not. Their mother began to notice. She asked if they were playing with something strange. Hazel denied it. Jonah said he'd thrown the board away. The board, of course, was still there. It always returned to the attic by morning, waiting at the center of the floor, like something that had never been moved. One night, Jonah whispered, I think we let something in. Hazel stared at him. What do you mean? It's in the walls now. I heard it moving last night. Knows when we're lying. He hesitated. I think it's pretending to be her. Hazel went cold. Who? Grandma. The final question was Hazel's. She waited until Jonah was asleep, sat by the board, lit a candle. Her voice shook. Are you, Grandma? No answer. Are you someone else? Knock. She swallowed. Did we bring you here? Pause. Then, knock. Do you want to hurt us? Knock. A long silence. Hazel's fingers trembled. Will you leave if we stop playing? Knock, knock. She backed away slowly. The candle flickered, then went out. They left the house the next day. Their mother said it was time for a break, that the house held too many memories. They stayed with an aunt for several weeks. Neither child spoke of the board. But the night before they left, Hazel went up to the attic. Alone. The board was still there. Waiting. She didn't touch it, didn't speak. She only stood in the doorway listening. From inside the dark, just beyond where the candlelight had once reached. Knock. They moved in on a Monday. Mondays, Judith always said, were unlucky for new beginnings. But Michael insisted the date didn't matter. The house on Fenton Lane was too perfect to worry about superstition. 3 bedrooms, a modest garden, a white picket fence, and a fireplace that still smelled faintly of old smoke. The neighbors, too, were nice. Too nice, perhaps. Mrs. Halpern from number 7 brought a pie before they'd even unpacked. Mr. Eckhart across the street helped Michael lift the old sofa through the door, insisting it was no trouble. Judith, pleasantly overwhelmed, felt something she hadn't in years. Safety. A sense of belonging. A cul-de-sac full of smiles and rose bushes. Only one house seemed out of place. Number 9. It was the last house on the lane. Small, dark, its blinds always drawn. Its garden perfectly tended in a strange two-green way. The hedge was clipped in a perfect wave. The marigolds always blooming, even in late autumn. It was strange how vibrant they looked when everything else on the street began to yellow. Mrs. Elwood lived there, alone. Don't trouble her, Mrs. Halpern had said quietly as she handed Judith the pie. She's been here longer than anyone. Doesn't take to strangers. Judith didn't press. She saw the way the others lowered their voices at her name. There was always one, an odd one, a silent one. She didn't believe in gossip until the first funeral. A man from number 12, Mr. Lewisham, died in his sleep. Heart failure, they said. Peaceful. The kind of death people envy. Judith hadn't known him well, but the next morning, passing by number 9 on her walk, she noticed something. Mrs. Elwood was in her garden, kneeling, digging. It was the first time she'd seen the old woman outdoors. Her thin, gray hair blew across her face as she worked. Her hands, gloveless and mottled with age, plunged deep into the soil, unhurried. A small mound of fresh dirt lay beside her. By the time Judith returned, the flower bed was full again, blooming brighter than it ever had. Orange petals turned upward like faces. She mentioned it to Michael, half laughing. "She has quite the green thumb," she said. Michael looked up from the paper. "Mrs. Elwood?" She was gardening the morning after he passed. Odd timing, don't you think? He shrugged. Coincidence. Then came the second funeral. A girl this time, teenager.
Car accident.
Once again, the next morning, Mrs. Elwood in her garden, kneeling, digging, the same routine, the same flowers blooming brighter, more upright. Too much color, Judith thought. Too alive. This time, she watched longer. The old woman's lips moved soundlessly. She placed something, small and white, into the soil before covering it. Judith thought it looked like a tooth. She told Mrs. Halpern. "Oh, she always plants something after someone dies," the woman said, too quickly. Then, as if realizing what she'd said, added, "It's a tradition. Keeps the garden healthy, I suppose." Judith asked how long she'd lived there. "No one really knows," Mrs. Halpern said. "She was there when I moved in. That was 32 years ago." Judith grew curious, then concerned. She found old photos of the street at the local library. One from 1975 in black and white showed number 9 unchanged. Same hedge, same roof, and there, in the photo, barely visible, stood a figure by the gate. The same face, the same gray hair, the same vacant eyes. Mrs. Elwood. "I think something's wrong with her," Judith whispered to Michael one night. He rubbed his eyes. "You think the old woman is killing people?"
No.
She hesitated. "I think she's feeding something." On the 4th week, Michael didn't wake up. He lay beside her, unmoving, eyes open, fixed on the ceiling with a look of vague surprise. The doctor said it was an aneurysm. No signs, no pain. The house felt colder that morning, smaller. Judith stepped out dazed, walked without thinking. Past the mailbox, past the picket fence, down the path of number 9. Mrs. Elwood was there, waiting. The garden was freshly turned. There were no tools,
No gloves.
just the old woman's eyes watching. "You should rest," she said gently. "Your grief is fresh." Judith said nothing. Behind Mrs. Elwood, the marigolds bloomed so brightly they seemed to hum. She walks by number 9 every morning now, rain or shine. Sometimes, she thinks she hears whispering from beneath the flower beds. Not voices exactly, just something like breath, like a slow sighing in the dirt. She wonders what would happen if she planted something there. She wonders what would grow.